Well, the halls of Congress are empty right now thanks to Donald Trump's proposed slush fund. Republican Senate Majority Leader John Thune canceled a planned vote-a-rama on the party's ICE funding, a vehicle they also were maybe going to use to funnel taxpayer dollars at Trump's ballroom, unclear, and instead just said, we're done, we're out, sent the chamber home until June. Happy weekend, guys. Nice work if you can get it. Now, this followed an hours-long meeting with acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, who came into the private Senate Republican caucus lunch, where a bunch of Republicans, some reporting says 25 members, got up and speak to him, dissatisfied with Blanche's answers about Trump's $1.8 billion seditionist boondoggle, and signaled they would help Democrats block both that and the ballroom funding. Then, after the meeting, reporters asked Thune if the White House had consulted him on either of these two main funding initiatives.
Well, it would have been nice if they had consulted. I think they probably would have gotten plenty of advice from lots of folks about it. But it's water under the bridge now, and you play the hand you're dealt, and we'll sort it out from here. But obviously, it became a more complicated and bumpy path than we had hoped for.
Senator Chris Van Hollen is a Democrat of Maryland. He recently grilled the acting Attorney General on that $1.8 billion fund during an appropriations hearing. Senator Van Hollen joins me now. So my understanding from the Senate caucus lunch, obviously you were not in there, it's the other caucus, was that they were pretty unhappy with this whole situation. I want to read you just a few more quotes here and get your reaction to what's going on that side. Tillis, imagine that, a fund that's set up to compensate people who assaulted Capitol Police officers. People that have pled guilty to physical acts may actually be able to get compensated. How absurd is that coming out of my mouth? Here's Mitch McConnell. So the nation's top law enforcement official is asking for a slush fund to pay people who assault cops. Utterly stupid, morally wrong, take your pick. It does seem like they found a thing that they won't walk the plank for.
Well, Chris, I think what really upset them was maybe not so much the slush fund, although people like Tom Tillis, who are retiring, have been very vocal about it. But the fact that we were going to offer amendments to the bill that we were supposed to be working on tonight that would have put the question to them, do you want your taxpayer dollars used to make payments to people who have been convicted of violent crimes, including beating up police officers or people who were convicted child molesters? They didn't want to face those votes, and so they decided to go home instead.
I want to be clear about this because this is part of Senate procedure where it can get wonky. But basically, as they're moving through, there are these things we call vote-a-ramas, and it's a period where the minority party can offer amendments, and you got to vote on the amendments. And the way that the majority party gets through the vote-a-rama is you just party line vote all the other party's ones down, right? You were going to offer amendments like, should money go to people that assaulted police officers? Should money go to convicted child molesters? And they were going to have to vote, yes, money should go to them, is basically what you're saying.
Well, that's exactly right, Chris. I also filed another one that said no monies from this slush fund should go to members of Congress. You may recall there are some senators who've been trying to get federal payments to them for what they claim was wrongdoing. So they would have had to also vote on whether or not these public taxpayer dollars would go to themselves or whether they would continue to be eligible under the fund. The amendment would make them ineligible. So that's exactly what's happening. I'm not sure they would have actually risen up against this slush fund unless they were going to be put to the test through their votes. And I made clear, others made clear that we weren't going to get out of there on the vote-a-rama without taking these votes.
Now, they've just delayed things, right? So this is a sort of short-term solution of just like unplug the gaming console from the wall, right? So that they don't have to keep playing. Yeah. But, the game's saved. They're going to come back and it's going to be the same situation. Am I wrong?
Well, that's right. I mean, as you pointed out earlier, the underlying bill here is to provide another $70 billion to a lawless ICE operation, even though there's a huge pipeline of taxpayer dollars already sitting at ICE. So the answer is they will come back. But I think what they're hoping, Chris, is in this intervening week, that the acting Attorney General, who really is continuing to act like President Trump's personal attorney, but that he will somehow develop guardrails around this fund. Now, whether he can actually do that now that the cat's already out of the bag, I don't know. But that's what they were, I think, essentially telling him that he needed to do.
Right. Just to be clear, the negotiation is not to get rid of the fund, which itself, I think, is completely lawless and indefensible and essentially a theft of the public purse. But to create some side agreement that says well, the child molesters won't get any, we'll keep the pedophiles out. But I just want to play for this, read this to you. Enrique Otario, who's one of the Proud Boys, who's convicted of seditious conspiracy, very serious, conviction, sentenced to 22 years for seditious conspiracy over the role that he played in that fateful day, said he planned to apply to the fund, assuming he can get between, and this is his words, $2 and $5 million, and then added, "I'm not greedy, but my life was all effed up because of this." The people, those are the people that seem to be ready to get in line for this money.
Well, that's exactly right. And that's why the acting Attorney General is going to have trouble putting up guardrails. Because if you look at the history of this fund that was just announced the other day, but has been thought about for a while, it is precisely, Chris, to try to reward people like the January 6 rioters, including those who were convicted. I questioned the Attorney General the other day about somebody who'd been part of the riot on January 6, who'd been pardoned by Donald Trump, who went on to be convicted of child molestation, who was saying to the kids that he molested, you know what, just don't tell people about what I did, and I'll give you some of the money I'm going to get from this slush fund. So all of those January 6 rioters had been anticipating these funds, and that is essentially what it was designed for. So it's going to be hard for the Attorney General to put up enough guardrails here, I think.
Guardrails. I mean, guardrails is really a crazy thing to think about with respect to this thing. Senator Chris Van Hollen, thanks for your time tonight.
There is a specific kind of silence that descends upon the United States Senate when the weight of a political bargain becomes too heavy for even the most hardened partisans to carry. It is not the silence of deliberation or the quiet of a late-night session. It is the silence of a stampede, sound of an entire legislative body suddenly dropping its tools, turning out the lights, and fleeing the building. This week, the world witnessed a collapse of institutional will that should alarm every citizen, regardless of their party. Senate Republican leader John Thune did not merely adjourn the chamber. He effectively severed the connection between the government and its duty to the public purse. By cancelling a scheduled vote-a-rama and sending the Senate home until June, the leadership has chosen a tactical retreat over a moral reckoning. But we must ask, what, exactly, are they running from? Beneath the noise of procedural delays and budget squabbles lies a reality so grotesque it feels like a fever dream of modern governance. At the heart of this paralysis is a proposed $1.8 billion Fundan initiative advanced by the current administration and defended by Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, nominally described as a vehicle for redress. It has been more accurately identified by members of the president's own party as a seditionist boondoggle. The thesis of this commentary is simple. We are witnessing the attempted institutionalization of a slush fund designed not to serve the public good, but to subsidize the enemies of the state and the predators of our society. This is no longer a debate about fiscal policy. It is a debate about whether the American taxpayer will be forced to finance the very individuals who sought to tear down the pillars of our democracy. Consider the factual anchors that have brought us to this precipice. First, we must look at the intended recipients. Reports indicate that this fund is being positioned to compensate individuals convicted of violent crimes committed on January 6, individuals who pled guilty to the physical assault of Capitol Police officers. This is not a matter of conjecture. It is a matter of intent. Enrique Otario, the former leader of the Proud Boys, currently serving a 22-year sentence for seditious conspiracy, has already signaled his intent to apply. His projected take, between $2 and $5 million, he is not alone. There is a line forming, composed of those who viewed the seat of our government as a battlefield, now viewing the national treasury as a personal ATM. Second, consider the depravity that has leaked through the cracks of this proposal. During a private Senate Republican lunch, The tension reportedly boiled over as 25 members confronted Todd Blanche, the source of their outrage. The realization that, without strict guardrails, this fund could potentially facilitate payments to convicted child molesters. We are presented with the harrowing account of a January 6 rioter, previously pardoned by Donald Trump, who was subsequently convicted of child molestation. This individual reportedly told his victims to remain silent, with the promise of a payoff from this very fund. Third, we must examine the cowardice of the exit. The Senate was prepared to vote on amendments that would have barred such individuals, assailants of police, and predators of children from receiving a single cent of taxpayer money. This is the vote-a-rama that Leader Thune cancelled. The Republican leadership did not flee because they disagreed with the amendments. They fled because they could not afford to be on the record voting against them. They could not face the political suicide of voting no on a ban for pedophiles. Yet they lacked the courage to defy a White House that demands this fund remain flexible. The broader implication here is a terrifying shift in the American contract. Historically, the law is a system of rewards for the law-abiding and consequences for the law-breaking. This proposed fund flips that architecture on its head. It suggests a new, dark reality where political loyalty to a single man is a more valuable currency than the safety of a child or the life of a police officer. It suggests that if you break the law in the right name, the law will not only forgive you, it will enrich you. Even Mitch McConnell, a man not known for rhetorical excess, described the proposal as utterly stupid and morally wrong. When the elder statesman of the GOP finds himself in alignment with the most progressive voices in the Democratic caucus, the center of gravity has not shifted. It has vanished. The acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, continues to operate less like the nation's chief law enforcement officer and more like a private defense attorney for the president's interests. His task now is to somehow develop guardrails during this week-long recess. But how do you put guardrails on a fund whose very DNA is designed to reward the lawless? How do you negotiate a side agreement to keep out the child molesters while leaving the door open for the You cannot. There is no clean version of a slush fund that rewards sedition. There is no tempered version of a policy that prioritizes the financial comfort of violent convicts over the integrity of the Justice Department. The Senate may have unplugged the console and walked away for the weekend, but the game is still saved. When they return in June, the same moral rot will be waiting for them on the floor. They can delay the vote, they can hide in their home states, and they can hope the news cycle moves on to a different outrage. But the American people should not move on. We must demand to know, who does our government serve? Does it serve the officers who held the line on January 6th, or the people who beat them with flagpoles? Does it serve the victims of the most heinous crimes imaginable, or the perpetrators seeking a government-sponsored payday? This is a moment of institutional clarity. The Justice Fund is a misnomer of the highest order. It is an insult to every taxpayer, a betrayal of every victim, and a middle finger to the rule of law. If the Senate cannot find the courage to kill this proposal outright, they are not just failing their constituents, they are participating in the dismantling of the republic they swore to protect. The lights are off in the Senate tonight. But when they come back on, the question will remain, is the United States government a protector of the people, or a benefactor for the lawless? The answer will be found in how they vote or how they continue to run.